iPhones. I'm getting used to doing email. I'm starting to be desensitized being on the subway train. I'm getting lost less, you know. But some of the things are the same. You know, people are still the same. I have my interaction skills from running several groups while incarcerated, but it is a challenge.
One of the interesting things about the program is, since we only offer a bachelor's degree, what does Chris do? So he gets involved. It takes about 6 years to get a 4-year degree, but he's serving 19 and a half. So when he finished school and graduated, and technically didn't have to do anything else with the program, he then turned around and enrolled in a graduate program at Sing Sing. So while he was going to graduate school, also helped us create and run a pre-college program, and did that for about 3 seasons. In the 3 seasons that we ran pre-college, preparing those younger men not just for the academic part, but to believe that they could do the academic part. There are 1,900 men at Sing Sing. There's only 106 in the college program. There's only 25 in the pre-college program. Now the waiting list is extensive, but not what you would think. We have about 46 men on the waiting list. There should be hundreds. Mostly they don't sign up because they don't believe they can.
The interesting thing is that, of course, having a felony record everybody knows is a strike against you, which is something that's pretty obvious. However, in the fields that our alumni gravitate to, mostly the social services field, 90% of our alumni who have been released are working, 85% are in the social services field. So what could be a detriment in one area is actually a plus. Because as Sean said earlier, people listen to you, and when you sit down with somebody as a case manager and they say, well, I've been in prison, well, so have I. Suddenly it's a level playing field and there's a greater connection. And when somebody sits down and said, oh, well, I had a drug problem, well, so did I. My drug problem took me to prison for 25 years. They go, okay, let's talk. So it's something, it can be turned into a plus. Although there's still discrimination, but however, because of the educational background, the degree that we get in Sing Sing from Mercy College is a Bachelor's of Science in Behavioral Science. So it helps us in the counseling field.
I'm going to put Emily on the spot, since the newest part of what we're doing now is a program where the average age is under 21, and there are 1,800 men at the facility where she just launched a brand new program for pre-college and college. But having an average age of 21 in a maximum security prison, it has a very different environment. So Emily, you want to talk a little bit about the program?
Yeah. Not to correct you in front of everyone, but Green's a medium, so
That's
I just
what
don't.
I meant a medium.
I want people to, because mediums and maxes are very different in their culture. Mediums are much more transitional. People are generally only in a medium facility for 2 or 3 years at a time, maximum. Even guys who start out in maxes get classified to a lower security classification after they've done a certain amount of time and if they have a good behavioral record. So in Sing Sing, you know, it's kind of ironic because it's not easy to run a college program in any prison, but it's almost easier at Sing Sing because the population is more stable, and you have guys like Chris and Todd and Sean who are around to help out with the program after they graduate. They stay around and they help and they mentor. We have some of that, but we just don't have that kind of continuity and stability that Sing Sing has. So that's been a challenge, having guys come in and out all the time, transitioning in the program, out of the program, helping them out when they get out. The younger population has been interesting. We weren't sure how that was going to go because traditionally the Hudson Link programs have been in facilities that are known for having an older population. Green is, basically if you are a young man, if you're under 25 years old and you get sentenced as an adult in New York State, you're probably going to Green. Green is just known to be the younger facility out of all of the mediums. We were kind of worried. We were like, I don't know, like, are these guys going to be motivated? Are they, going to want to do the work? Yeah, they do. I have a waiting list too. I have a long waiting list already for next summer. It's just a matter of giving them the option and kind of letting them mull it over a little bit. They haven't had a lot of time to sit around and be like, yeah, this isn't working for me anymore. I need to do something else. You kind of have to plant that seed and be like, hey, we have a college program here. one kid in particular, Sean spoke to the 16 and 17-year-olds at Green. There's about 70 there. And he asked who in the room wanted to try college. Maybe like one or two guys raised their hands. And then this one little kid, not little kid, I mean, he was 17 at the time, but he looks like he's about 12, just started laughing. And Sean was like, "Why is that funny?" And he was just like, "I don't know. Just nobody's ever asked me if I wanted to go to college before." And then a few months later, I was at his GED graduation. I use those as recruiting grounds, the GED graduations in the facilities. And he comes up to me, this same kid who was just acting like a total goofball throughout that whole presentation, and was like, "Oh my gosh, I so want to come to college. I'm going to be your best student. How do I sign up?" And so I was able to enroll him, and he's been doing great ever since. So when kids act like knuckleheads, they are not necessarily knuckleheads. That's just how they have learned to present themselves. And you kind of have to plant that seed and then let them come to you, because they will. They will come to you once you prove yourself to be trustworthy and that you're for real, because these kids have been betrayed a lot, have been told a lot of things that haven't come to fruition. So you just put it out there, and then you prove yourself by actually offering this program, and they come, and they're committed. They're just as committed as the older guys.
I think an interesting part of that is when we did the first pre-college component, because for years we operated using guys like Todd and Chris that had college, and then in '94 when the program was taken away, they had credits ready, they had college experience ready. So we naturally got them into the program first. After 6, 8, 10 years, that pool of men and women were drying up. And Chris and one of the other men at Sing Sing came to me and said, we need to start thinking about some kind of remedial work, something else to give guys a chance to go to school and have never been in college before. And we created this pre-college program. 25 men went to pre-college for 14 months. And the only thing they were promised was to take the placement exam for Mercy College at the end. And the students did fantastic. And 14 months is a long time for remedial work, but if the waiting list to get into the program is 2 years long anyway, I was in no rush to get them through that. So after the 14 months was up and they took the placement exam, only 19 men showed up for the placement exam. And I realized that I dropped the ball. Because it's scary shit, even for men in a maximum security prison. The fact that we're telling them that, oh my God, you're doing fantastic, doing college level work, and you're ready for the placement exam. If you're the first person in your family, if every one of those men in that room are the first ones in their family to go to college, there's a pressure behind that. That's scary. And not showing up to take the placement exam means that you don't have to actually do it now. And that the guys that didn't make it had all these reasons why they couldn't make it that day, but the 19 men that took that exam that day scored directly into college level English and math. Now, I also work at Mercy College, and they probably don't like when I share this, but about 65% of their traditional students from high school to college, when they take that placement exam, don't score into college level work. We had a 100% success rate with men that have not only the first time they've gone to college, but the first ones in their family. Well, I'm gonna put Chris on the spot, since he ran the pre-college program, about the qualifications before they come to us, because there are educational qualifications, and then after they come to us, and how pre-college puts them in motion for the rest of the program. No pressure.
Qualifications, you have to be in the facility more than a year. You have to be off keep lock. You have to stay out of disciplinary fractions. Gotta stay out of trouble. You gotta start changing your life at the door. Because you can't come to college and be keep locked. Also, you must have your GED. You must have your GED to get into college. So when they come to the pre-college program, we check all these things out. And we put them through a rigorous test. Which is reading, writing, and doing math.
The Department of Corrections in New York, where it means anyone from 16 on goes into the state system, is about 52,000 men and women right now. The only educational requirement is that they have to enroll these men and women, not graduate them. They have to enroll them in a GED program. So that's where we get them, because a lot of the men and women that go through our program, when they're done with us, they'll become teachers in these GED, or assistant teachers in these GED programs. So they'll come to Chris and say, hey, for next year's class, I have 1 or 2 guys that are really into the GED program. And I know for Emily, when she picked the first students to get into her green program, it wasn't based on who were the academic superstars in the facility. It was based on the men that gave a shit, that really wanted to go that extra mile that Chris is talking about. You can see that demeanor, you can see that dedication, and you can see the attitude. And that's what does it. They would envision in a prison that other men knocking the books out of our hands, dissuading us from going to college, like, why are you better than, are you better than us? What are you trying to do? It's just the opposite. It's just the opposite. And I can tell you that I've lived in A Block in Sing Sing. It's the largest cell block in the country. There are galleries in that cell block where I would be the only white person on that gallery. And I was never discouraged from going to school, and actually just the opposite. Other men that maybe didn't see themselves as college material, or were afraid to try it, or were just on the waiting list, would say to me, do you need me to cook for you tonight? Do you need me to run errands for you so that you can pay attention to your studies? It's not what you would envision in a maximum security prison. It doesn't match what TV tells us and what the movies tells us about what really happens, which is really this building of a community amongst men that don't even know each other. And running a college program anywhere is difficult. Running it in a maximum security prison where the textbooks, the school supplies, the teachers have to go through a security component every single time they visit, it's tricky. It's tricky. But the professors were so motivated by the students and by the work that we were doing that they went the extra mile. The facility itself, quite frankly, as long as they're not paying for it, they're encouraging of it. I think that they're always worried that we're going to give them some kind of bill at the end of the semester. And since we've been doing it for 14 years without their financial help, they're encouraging that we keep to do this. But also, I just did a live piece with the commissioner of all 60 prisons in the New York State Department of Corrections. And one of the things that he said was, recidivism doesn't affect his world. His world is running 60 prisons and keeping them as safe as possible for the staff, the security personnel, and the inmates. And statistically, it's proven that the prisons that have educational programs are the safer facilities for everyone. So if we have something like this that we're not paying for, that we could put in these prisons, then why wouldn't we want them in every single prison?
There are not, college programs in every single prison in New York State. We have 5 programs. There's other organizations out there that do this, but it's still maybe 10 to 15 facilities out of 60. So it's in very high demand. And yes, I get requests all the time, and I'm sure Sean gets these letters too, and the other academic coordinators do as well. Please, can I move to blah, 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 so I can continue with this program? I don't know if anybody knows anything about prisons in New York, but green is the last medium you want to go, to be perfectly honest. It's not a great medium. It's known for young guys. It's known for gang activity. It's known for being a totally hectic, stressful environment. No prisons are fun, but green is not a place you want to go. When I originally moved my program from Mount McGregor, which was another medium security prison that was basically the opposite of green, small, older population, much more laid back, Mount McGregor was closed, so I had to move my program. Green was the facility that really wanted a college program, and so we brought it there, and we figured it'll be different, but we want to try it. And the department offered, off the record, if we were able to move some of your students to green to continue there, would you be interested in that? We said, of course. Half of the guys elected to move there. And they moved from a prison whose nickname was Magic Mountain because it was like the best medium in the state. As I said, no prisons are great, but Mount McGregor is about as good as you can get for a prison, to the worst medium in the state. And they moved for this program, just for this program. So it's a huge pull. Typically, we can't do anything with transfers or movement or anything like that. This was a very special case because a facility was closing, but yeah, we get those requests all the time.
Even though when Emily and I, after the men got moved, and after Emily kind of set up the first semester, it was nice to have this mixture of older students that
Mhm.
were coming from Mount McGregor and these newer students that were trying college for the first time. But it took us 2 months, 2.5 months to get ready for that first semester. And we met with the students right before we started, and they were just like, "Okay, please tell us we're ready to get started." They were kind of on their last emotional leg to get back into school, because it is a different facility. I went to 9 different maximum security prisons over 16 years, and they all looked very differently, but some were complete horrors. And they're just, 100 years old. When it rains outside, it rains inside. It makes a difference in which facility you live in. It's just the way it is.
But as far as the older guys mentoring the younger guys, that took off immediately, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
That college program, like the biggest part of my job, honestly, is running the pre-college program, because I'm taking guys in who have never had college experience, they just have GED, and really grooming them and getting them in the frame of mind to be college students. I had no problems with the college program. I started, half Mount McGregor guys, half Green guys. That program took off and it practically ran itself, and it still is that way. Like, I have to recruit the instructors and classes and everything like that, but, it's been amazing to have that mixture of ages. As far as the Department of Corrections is concerned, we are all volunteers. That's the status that we have. If you're not an employee, you're a volunteer. Like, they have to give you a classification so you can go in and out of the facility. We have no power at all. Like, we can make requests in certain circumstances, but there's no guarantee. It's completely up to the department itself. And for I don't blame them for not really wanting to do that, because movement is already an enormous job, transporting prisoners from prison to prison. And unless there's like an extenuating circumstance, like somebody only needs 3 more credits to get their bachelor's degree, and please can he just move to Fishkill just for this one semester, then maybe. But in general, that's not a thing that we do.
Some people are jealous, some people are not. But a lot of times, the people who are jealous, they really want to get into it. And we make it okay for people to go to college, because we were what they were now, they are now. They're still living the misled life. So that makes it okay for them, where they can pull their friends in.
Big draw.
He's had his hand up for a while.
Man in the
I was just thinking too, when Chris was running the pre-college component, there were students in that classroom that he was in prison longer than they were alive. So it was a weird component, but they look up to the older guys, so it worked.
And the jail system is actually a separate system from the prison system, so it runs very differently. There are some cool programs at Rikers that we're supportive of, but we haven't been able to do anything there.
Plus, we're afraid of those guys.
We are starting to explore the possibility of looking at juvenile facilities, because when there's a facility called Brookwood Secure Center, which is in Hudson, about 30 minutes from Green, and when guys age out of Brookwood, they almost always go to Green. So we are exploring the possibility of maybe grooming them for college there, and then when they go to Green, continuing them there.
Because the number one thing that we have to do as an organization is let folks that aren't affected by the system know that just because I was in prison and just because I was there for 2 decades doesn't make me a monster. I made a mistake when I was 16 years old. I was in the 9th grade. I paid for that mistake. I spent nearly 2 decades in prison for it. And though I could never change what I did, I could never fix what I did, I bring value back to the community. I work with young fathers in East Harlem. I'm on the Governor's Task Force for Reentry. I work with the Center for Social Justice at Mercy College. There are pieces of my past that are valuable back in the community. Why would you not let me help you? Now, if you've never met someone like me, or like my fellow students here, you would not know what to think. If you heard about a guy that went to prison in the 9th grade and was there for 2 decades, you might say, well, shit, I don't want to sit next to that guy. You don't know what he looks like. And I don't mean physically, I mean, how damaged is that person? Because you would think they probably are. But the fact is, we have 249 men and women that have been through the program and are now home. And as Todd said, 85% are working in the social services field. So right now, about 66% of all the men and women in this country that go to prison return to prison. 66%. New York does a little bit of a better job. It's about 43% in New York. I truly believe it's because New York has really put their money where their mouth is as far as reentry programs. And other parts of the country, they struggle with transportation and travel and reentry programming. So I think that we've done a little bit of a better job here. Right now, the Hudson Link program has less than 2% recidivism rate in 14 years.
As Sean said earlier, a lot of times when you're in that type of environment, the first thing you think is that you can't do it. So you don't want to try because you don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to fail. It's bad enough you're already there. And you don't want to make yourself look any sillier than you already do. So the biggest challenge for most of us is really just trying it. And then once we try it, to continue doing it. Because as in the film, when Sean talked about the noise, A Block has 640 people in it. And it's never quiet. And you're trying to write a paper and you're trying to do well. You're just trying to pass. Forget about doing well. So there's a different aspect to it. And you're walking the minefield of prison. You know, things happen all the time. I mean, TV and movies is out there, but things do happen in there. That's what it is. It's the nature of the beast. So you got to make sure that you don't get caught up in something if you're not in the wrong area or you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So all these things, you're juggling this at the same time, and you're trying to do your schoolwork. So that's, I think, the most challenging aspect of going to the University of Sing Sing, as they started to call it.
Most of my students got straight A's.
They have to maintain a 2.0 with Mercer College or they get withdrawn. So we don't have, I don't think we've ever had anyone get withdrawn.
No.
Believe it or not, we've now helped 5 different states replicate. Since the movie came out, people are seeing the movie and calling and saying, hey, how can we do it? Would you help us? We have helped these other states replicate for free. We don't charge for any part of it. We use the movie as a tool to get the school administration and the prison administration to see that this can actually happen. And actually, believe it or not, the name Sing Sing has helped us. I had a meeting with the warden at the Maine State Prison, which is the only maximum security prison in Maine. And ironically, it's the one where they shot Shawshank Redemption. And the warden let me show the film, speak with the students, talk with the college administration, and said, you know, this would be really great in this prison, but this is a maximum security prison. I don't think we could really do it here. And I remember saying, well, if it'll work in Sing Sing, it'll work anywhere. Because, you know, Sing Sing has this notorious name, which doesn't really fit with, it's the University of Sing Sing. It doesn't really fit, but I've used the name to say, well, if we could do it here, we could do it anywhere. And they now have a 2-year college program at Maine State Prison.
Since our inception, we've had 800 people pass through our program. We've awarded 344 degrees. As of last week, we have 255 released alumni. By the end of this month, that number will be 268. And 1.8% have returned to prison as we stand here today. Our original movie was called 0% because our first 14-year history, nobody came back. So recently we've had 4 people come back in the 15 years that we've been in operation. That's pretty exciting, I think. Just my opinion.
Well, what education did for me was make me understand why I behave in such antisocial ways, especially psychology, sociology. I had low self-esteem. I was living off this self-image that I garnered from the environment. It don't excuse, justify my behavior. But now I learned why I became this person. Now I never do it again because I have the insight. It made me a more empathetic and compassionate person. You start being sensitive to the world around you, different plights that different groups are going through. So it totally changed my outlook, and I try to impart it on other people who have not yet become enlightened.
I will say this as a son of 2 New York City cops. You know, they don't love what I do. They don't. They spent their career putting people in prison. And it's ironic. They're very happy that I have a job, but they're not happy with what I do. And their own son is a recipient of the program. So for me, it actually opens my eyes up. There are way more people out there that hear what we're doing and don't like it, don't think it's a good idea, and don't think it should be part of what our community has, than folks that believe what you do. So I appreciate your feedback that you think it's a good idea.
I mean, I worked in a prison that closed, so you know, I saw the reaction of the town, and it was not pretty. they were mad. The New York State, I forget, is NISCBA, that's the union of correctional officers in New York State, you know, protested every day about the closures. You know, I think about this issue a lot. I really do, because I have officers at Green that I get along with very well. I sympathize with the fact that they need a job. I sympathize with the fact that these rural areas don't have many job opportunities, and that these prisons provide them. But I think we can do better. I don't think that we need to warehouse people in order to employ people. This economy is shifting. There's jobs that need to be created, like green construction, all kinds of environmental stuff. There's things that could happen in these rural areas that aren't prison-based. It just requires creative thinking. Everybody has the right to employment and a right to a job, but I just don't think we have the right to lock people up so other people can be employed. Prison populations, even though they weren't voting residents, voting citizens of that area, those numbers would count towards the population of the town. Gerrymandering laws, exactly. So the different towns would get more funding for having prisons. That doesn't happen anymore. However, prisons do stimulate the economies of towns because those jobs pay well. Like, that's a fact. I just think that we need better options than that.